Have you ever wondered what games you should keep or you should lose? Find out here at Purge Review.
Warlock is one of those games that's really hard to talk about because the artwork is so laughable. And I'm sorry if you're the artist, but this artwork is just incredibly laughable. It's not like that it's bad and laughable, like, oh, this is so bad. It's not humorous in a way that, like, oh, they were intending to be funny. I think it's somewhere in the middle, and it's amateurish, but it comes off as funny, and it almost becomes appealing in that regard. So let's put that aside. The look of the game is the look of the game. What you're going to get is a multi-use card. So what you're doing doesn't necessarily make sense thematically, although you're building this little city to score points, etc. Each card is going to be able to be used in 3 different ways, and each card has a different power depending on how it's used. There's a little bit of rules going on in this. It's not an entry-level game at all. I have to say this is a pretty good game. This is actually a surprise for me. I don't know how I ended up with this game. Maybe I bought it in a lot or something. I do that sometimes. I'll just buy 4 or 5 games at a time. This was one of those. Tried it out. I'm like, this is actually pretty good. Now, it wasn't good enough to keep. You were making interesting decisions during the game. Cards are multi-use, which is very interesting. I like that in a game like Lagrange. I like that quite a bit. I have a little bit of a disconnect with the artwork here. I have a little bit of disconnect with the game itself. It's a little bit abstracted for me. If I was going to play a multi-use card game, maybe play Lagrange instead. Glory to Rome is a very popular one. There's a lot of those games out there. Not a ton, but a lot. This is a top one. If the theme attracts you at all, I would say, look, take another look at this one. This is a very good game. This may be a good game you've never heard of. And that's excellent in that regard too, right? It has a little bit of a teaching bump. It's not that the rules are bad. They're actually quite good. It's just that the cards are all used in different ways, and you're going to need a fairly good player aid for that. So a little bit of a learning curve. This isn't Race to the Galaxy learning Icon City or anything, but just there's a little bit of a learning curve to the game because things can use different ways. And then once you have that, I get it moment, then the game can kind of flow for you a little bit better. Excellent game. I had a lot of fun with this. It's a good game. I think some of the amateurish or the independent low budget nature of it will hold it back a little bit. I'd like to see this one released again, maybe cleaned up a little bit with better components. I think that would help it out quite a bit. But look, that's unlikely to happen. It's a fairly solid game. So if you see the flow of the game, you're like, this is pretty interesting. Rest assured, this is a fairly good game. And what I'm going to recommend, I'm going to put this underneath good games you may not have heard of. While it's not for me, we're not going to keep it, just not fitting into the rotation of what we do here. It's an excellent game for you to try out. Maybe even do a blind purchase because it can be found pretty cheaply if you can track it down. Warlock was a hit, believe it or not, although we'll be purging it. Here's Warlock, which has one of the creepiest, funny, worst artworks. I don't know. Just a creepy box on the cover. It's really funny how they're all just staring at this person you can't see. I don't know. It is what it is. Open up, you can get a rulebook, which we'll take a look at in a few minutes. You're going to have these player cards. So this will be one. These are nice cardboard. That will be used for the whole group. And then each individual person will have one of these, and they're exactly the same. Then you're going to have the cards that you're going to have in the game. You're going to have some player aids. That will be here. It tells you all the powers and the way a turn will go, which are very useful. You're going to have these 2 cards, which are used for the auctioneer and the first player. And then you're going to have some of these ruin cards, dragons that you'll have here. These will just be set aside. And then you'll have all of these. All of these will be cards that will be used during the game. You just kind of shuffle them up. They're these little square cards, which I find very hard to shuffle. And they're really, really small, but it's good that they're a little bit small because you're going to need a lot of these on the table. You can see the artwork here. Everything you're going to need to know is up here. The icons to purchase them are down here. And the artwork just repeats over and over and over and over again. No attempt at all to change the artwork. There's probably 5 or 6 pieces of different art in here, and it's just used over and over and over again. The components are okay. I'm not crazy about the artwork in this one. It's okay. I don't like the square for shuffling. These little, and they're kind of thin, but it does work well when you're actually playing the game. So here's the rule book for the game. It is very, 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 very thick and long. Good news is, it's a lot of languages. So this is all just story up. You're going to have the game materials with pictures of the components and what setup will look like over here. This is actually really good. I didn't like it at first, but yeah, it's really good. And then sequence of play. The game is very, very simple. In the red, you're going to have the examples with the pictures of what you're doing. And then you're going to have the auction and how to build things. The rules goes very quickly. And then all the powers and skills. So you'll refer to this a lot. You're also going to have player aids that will be available that will give you a lot of this information also. So you can easily take a look at this, and everybody can have one of these little player aids. So that helps out with the powers. And you have examples in red with plenty of pictures. And then the end of game, final scoring with an example down here, which is really good. And then some just credits and thank yous. But the examples with the pictures is fantastic. I found the rulebook to be really good. It's just bigger than it needs to be due to all the other languages. So I'm going to go over a quick overview of the game. I'm going to go over this board here and what it does first. So when the game starts out, you're going to shuffle up this deck of cards, and everybody will grab 5. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take 2 of these cards, whatever you want, and you're going to put them face down. The other 3 will just stay in your hand, if you will. Then you're going to place 1 to this area up here, and you're going to place 1 into your area over here. So you can place 1 in the mines, in the dungeon, or in the castle, etc. But then you'll place 1 up here in the journal thing. Now, the round, you're going to play 3 rounds of the game. The round will end when there's 3 times the number of players. So if you're playing 2-player, once there's 6 cards up here, the round will end. With 3 players, it would be 9. So these cards will kind of come out. And that's what this board is going to do. Your stack of cards will be here, and your discard pile will be there. So that's what this is going to utilize. And keep in mind that this is going on during the game. When you place a card over here, you have 3 options. You can place a card face down into the mine. And what you're going to be looking at here is the gold and what it's worth. I'll come back to that later, but just know you can place a card here in the mine. Or you could place a card in the dungeon, and you would put this right up here. And what you're going to be using this for, this will use to pay cost if you want to build cards. When we get there, I'll show you how that works. Or you can put a card right into the castle, and when you put a card into the castle, you're going to utilize it for its power. Each card is going to have a different power, and I'll kind of show you how that works. So in that first spot, you're going to place a card into the general supply and one in one of these 3 locations. So now you're left with these 3 cards you're going to have. So in this first part, I've explained what each of these 3 locations to do. In the first part, you can only place 1 in the mine or the dungeon. So let's say I place this card here in the mine. As the game goes on, maybe I have some cards here in my dungeon. So what I can do now is I can play a card from my hand, or I could draw an additional card. So I just want to draw a card. That's my action. In this section of the game, you're going to be able to do 3 actions, but 1 at a time. The other action you can do is play a card. I could play another one into my mine. I could play one into the dungeon, or I could play one into here to utilize the power of it. After everybody's taken their 3 actions, you're going to come back to this bar that was over here. And if you remember from phase 1, we were playing cards down in here. Let's say in a 4-player game, we each put a card down. Now we can auction these off, and you're going to auction them off using the cards from your mine. So like here, I've got 3 gold and 3 gold. I got 6 possible gold I can auction off. So maybe I just want to use one of them, and I would auction off for 3. And everybody can go around and try to bid. Now, other players can bid less or more. Let's say this person wanted to bid 1. I'm going to get first pick, and they're going to get second pick because I bid 3, and they only bid 1. And that's when you would take cards from here, from this general bar location. And you're going to pick 2 cards based from this bar location. If you don't spend anything in your mine, it just stays there for a further turn. The last phase is going to be the building phase, and you're going to be building out. It's a little bit confusing, but any cards you build here, through here will be the edge, and you can build a 4x4 grid here. So if you wanted to build a card, so let's say I wanted to build this wizard card, I want to put it on the edge of here, I would have to get rid of the requirement. If you look here, the requirement is a human, so I would have this card is a human card. You can see the icon is the same, so I can just discard this, and I can build this card here. And what you're going to be doing is trying to score these in such a way that you can score the maximum amount of points at the end of the game, but you will take cards from your dungeon in order to do this. So this right here will be cards you play for the auction. This will be cards you'll play to play cards into your city, and this will be cards you discard just for the powers. So let's talk about some of the powers. Here's the giant. If you play a giant here, then I can take a dragon and place it in my city. And that kind of takes up a space on the board. If you were to build one right here, then you can switch the location of 2 cards on the board. So that's how the giants will work. The humans have a couple skills. The first one is if you're able to play it here for the power, you will get to draw 3 cards, either from the discard pile or the draw pile, and they're worth 2 or a half gold in the mine, so they can be very valuable if they're here. The goblin allows you to take a card from the bar. You still have to pay the cost, but you can build it right into your city, or it has a skill, it depicts an extra creature. If the goblin's in your dungeon, you can use one or both creatures to pay for the building costs when you're building it. So it can be a really nice addition. The gnome allows you to take a card from your hand and put it into your empire. And you don't have to pay the building costs. So if I played him there for the power, I could just take this, build it into my city, and I don't have to pay the cost to do so. Gnomes and they're worth the victory points, but they can also be played here without paying any cost to build them, which is a nice skill. The orcs allow you to take a ruined city out of supply, and you can replace the city of another player with the ruined city. You cannot use this power on states protected by a dragon. So a dragon can block that, but allow me to take one of the ruined cities, put this in somebody else's, and I can take their card and put it in mine. So that can be a pretty nice one to have, the orc. The last one is the wizard. You can swap one of your cities with that of another player. The cities are placed in the fields where the swapped cities were. So I could take this out, grab maybe something from your city, and then this has to go in the exact same spot in your city. So that's what the wizards are going to do with their magical powers. At the end of the game, you're going to score points for everything in your city. Most points is going to be your winner. Who should buy this game? This is an interesting game because I would recommend it highly to a lot of people. And people who like things a little more on the intellectual side. The cards have a lot going on, a lot of different uses for them. They have a couple attributes on them. If they're played here, they can do this and move this card around. There's a lot kind of going on here, more than it seems when you first look at it. So I'm going to go ahead and say not for non-gamers or light gamers, although not necessarily heavy gamers, although heavy gamers may see this as a game they would take a break with and say, hey, I'm having a pretty good time with this one. This is a pretty good game. And one I would recommend to a lot of people. Because of its unique nature, I'd probably say try it out before you buy. But I could see a lot of people buying this on a blind purchase and enjoying it quite a bit. This is what I'm going to recommend to you to try out. Warlock.